Welcome to Under the Wing with Andrew, where stories soar and conversations fly free. I'm your host, Andrew Wingard, inviting you to pull up a chair, kick back, and join me around the campfire for some warm exchanges. Each episode, we dive deep into life's journey with incredible guests from all walks of life, blending wisdom, lessons, and a little bit of laughter along the way. Whether you're here for inspiration, insight, or just a good old chat, you're in the right place. Gather around. Let's begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Under the Wing with Andrew, the podcast where we exchange stories and ideas. I'm your host, Andrew Wingard, and I'm thrilled to have you with us today. In today's episode, we are excited to have a second-time guest, Ms. Suerethia Henderson, a former Division I track and field student athlete, a bachelor's degree from Youngstown State, a master's in finance from Northern Illinois, and now currently a financial analyst at Fiserv, where she's partnering her skills and her talents and leveraging her skills and experiences to drive impactful insights. And so we're actually happy to have Ms. Henderson back on the show. She's a professional now, 2 years in the game, excited to hear what she's learned early on in her career. And so without further ado, let's welcome Ms. Henderson to the show.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that. Hello, I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you back. You're now with a strong financial company down in Georgia. So now I guess you're a Southern girl now. The Ohio Midwest is gone. How are you acclimating to the South?
Yeah, Atlanta's been great. It's been a pretty smooth transition for moving down here after finishing my grad program. But the weather, it's a lot hotter down here. It gets hot in the summer, but there's no snow. So I will take that. It's fun. Nice. Rode some horses down here. There's a lot of different Southern things, but the culture, the diversity down here, I love it. There's a lot of different food festivals that happen in the city, jazz festivals. So there's always something to do.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right into this conversation. It's going to be a little bit different from our first conversation, but I'm excited to talk about this topic because I know you're extremely passionate about it. And so I'm interested to hear your insight, and especially as you work with our youth and give back to your community. But first, I want to ask a quick question. We might have some young listeners here, college, getting ready to go to college, but they're going into their first internship. And so you started as an intern with Fiserv back at some time, and now you're actually full-time there. And so what I would like you to do is just elaborate on, a couple of tips to those individuals who are going into their internship, some tips on how to best use their time when they're there.
Yeah. I started back, my first internship, I had 2 internships at Fiserv. My first one was back in 2021. It was fully remote because I was like fresh off of COVID. COVID was still still kind of lingering. So it was a fully remote internship, but I was still out of the Atlanta office. Mm-hmm. But even prior to I know even at Youngstown State, the business college there is amazing. And so a lot of the things that we learned throughout our classes was one, our resume, building that out. And then having the organization, the structure of the resume. So it's clear and easy to read for the employer, right? Mm. So you want it to just be straight to the point and really highlight the tasks that you completed, whether if it was in your jobs, with recent employers, where's your education from, what's your field of study, any organizations that you were involved in. So really having a good resume, solid resume, and then also building up your LinkedIn profile, which is prior to going to college, I did not know about LinkedIn at all. But it wasn't until I was in undergrad where I really we learned about it in one of our classes, and it was part of one of our projects to create a LinkedIn profile and just really connect with some other professors at the university, but then also depending upon your field of study, connecting and networking there's like a follow button. So it's similar to like a Facebook or Twitter, like combination. But yeah, connecting to people who are in either your field of study or in what you aspire to do, which allows you to have like access to them and also see like what they're doing within the community or what they're doing within that field. So that was very helpful. I would say LinkedIn is, I have gotten connected with a lot of people from different that are within the area of finance, whether it's fintech or financial planning. You meet people from all different walks of life. So I would really, building a LinkedIn profile would be very helpful.
Nice. All things that you can do, getting into your internship, starting your internship. I think that's great advice, especially as you're getting ready to start applying, start building that networking, or even just a presence online, because it does really matter as professionals start to look at your accounts. I think you hit the nail on the head there. And so someone told you some right information there, and then even start building it once you're in there as well. As you start building those relationships in your internship. So that's helpful. Thank you so much for sharing. So let's dive into the meat of this finance conversation, as I'm really excited. And so I wanted to start out with a quick story. I'm a business undergrad as well. And I think the only class I technically failed in college was my finance class. And now I think I didn't even fail. The professor passed me by some strange reason. I think he felt so bad, like I was going so hard in his class, and I just could not understand it. And I'm like, man, it's not clicking. I was there after class. I was before class. I mean, everything that you are told to do, I was doing. And like, I was pretty good at math, but for some reason, I could not understand the language of finance. And so I didn't really think about it until once I got older, and I started getting ingrained into what that looks like and how to actually, what does this mean? I realized it felt like a different language, and I just had no experience with that language at 20 years old. And so with you being involved in the finance world, how can a novice, someone young, or even someone old who might not have the context of understanding the language, how can a novice get started with understanding the finance side of life?
Yeah, I would, there's a lot of, from different books. I know my education, like with going through undergrad and then finishing my graduate program, has been very helpful to me. And I think that's one thing that led me to the creation, to create Wealth Network 360. Again, to your point of how you were talking about that language, a few of the common challenges that are present in society today, like regarding financial literacy, I group them into three buckets: limited accessibility, the complex verbiage, so thinking along the lines of that language, and then also lack of awareness. And so I think one of the things that led me to the creation of Wealth Network 360, is acknowledging and becoming aware that, finance terms, they can be difficult for learners to grasp. The majority of financial literacy courses, they're not designed typically for individuals who are encountering financial terms for the first time. And instead, some financial literacy courses are designed with the expectation of there already being some background knowledge there, or an assumption that a learner is coming in at a certain level, having a certain level of understanding. And in result, that can lead to decreased motivation for the learner because the content it's too complex. It's too complex to comprehend. Yeah. And then also the limited accessibility. So like in some areas, access to quality like financial tools, resources, or programs can be limited or non-existent, particularly in underserved communities, which can cause for a hindrance for those who live in that community. And so I think this, knowing those two things, and then also the lack of awareness. Lastly, many individuals are not aware of the importance of financial education until they reach a specific age or encounter a certain experience. For example, someone might not appreciate, the need for budgeting or saving until they start managing their own finances or maybe want to buy a house. But unfortunately, until they reach such a point, they may not fully grasp, how important it is to be knowledgeable about finance. And so I think that's one of the things that actually set Wealth Network 360 apart is that, we remove the complex verbiage and incorporate auditory, tactile, and visual types of learning that make learning about financial education both informative and also interactive for the user. So I
No,
think that would.
that's good. So I think I have some questions about Wealth Network 360 a little bit farther down, but let's stay there for a moment. And you mentioned something that I thought was I want you to kind of dive into a little bit more. You mentioned discouraged, and I think that's the biggest word that I could use when I was failing at classes. Like I just felt discouraged in the sense I couldn't connect. If someone is being so, if, in terms of you mentoring someone and they are discouraged and they're just like, man, I just can't get this. I don't understand. What are some ways or something that you would share with someone to help them pick themselves back up as they're on that journey of financial literacy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So especially if they're going through, whether if it's mentoring, because I used to mentor students on financial literacy and leadership development throughout undergrad and graduate school, or if it's through Wealth Network 360, incorporating those three types of learning. So auditory having to do with hearing, so watching any videos or associating any sounds with learning about finance, learning about money. Tactile, so having to do with touch. So if we're in person, if I was mentoring a student in person, maybe bringing in if we're doing like a financial literacy workshop, maybe bringing in like physical, like play money, or depending upon what the topic, the unit that we're going over, so they can associate touch. Tactile learning has to do with touch, with the way that they're learning. So there's auditory, tactile, and visual. So again, with finance, you're dealing with typically a lot of numbers, a lot of data, and sometimes that can just really be a lot to digest and process. So if we are on a unit that discusses and has a lot of numbers and a lot of data, putting it into visual representation. So like charts, graphs, different type of visual tools. So it helps the learner process that data a little bit more easier, can help.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. So as I've said, financial literacy is, of course, a big focus for you, which is why you developed the Wealth Network 360. What gaps do you see in how young adults are educated about money management today?
Yeah, so some of the gaps, again, along those lines of the limited accessibility, in a lot of areas like throughout the U.S., particularly in underserved communities, it's not common learning about financial literacy. And sometimes, again, until a certain individual reaches a certain age or goes through that certain life experience, they probably haven't encountered too much regarding learning about money and how money works, how money moves. And so I would say that's limited accessibility, the complex verbiage, and the lack of awareness. Those are some of the gaps that we do see present in society today.
Gotcha. Now, I want to stay on the idea of young adults. And whether it's from your perspective as a young professional or maybe something that you've heard from other professionals, what is one misconception young adults often have about money or investing that you feel may need to be corrected, or you just have some thoughts on like a common misconception that young adults have about money or investing?
A common misconception. Okay. I would say a common misconception is, there's a few, honestly. One misconception is that it could take a lot of money to get started, like to start investing, whether if that's in stocks or bonds or like building a mutual fund. Yeah, it doesn't really take like thousands of dollars to get invested, to get started with investing.
Yeah.
Whether if it's like purchasing stock prices, they range. There's varying prices for stocks, depending upon the type of industry that you want to get involved in, the type of company that you want to invest in. And stock prices can range from, as low as like I've seen low as like $5 all the way up to thousands of dollars. So I would say it's one common misconception is that it takes a lot of money to get started.
Get started, yeah.
Another misconception I would say is, let me think on that. I'll have to come back to that question.
Yeah, but I mean that first one's good, right? I think we all assume that it just takes this truckload of money to do things, and I think we forget about humble beginnings sometimes. And
actually, I think it just came back to me. I think my thought just came back.
Yeah, what you got?
I would say the second misconception is that you would need like a lot of income coming in when like it would be a misconception that like, oh, like I have to make this amount of money. I would have to make this type of salary. I would have to have this amount of money coming in a month or on a biweekly basis. But really just shifting from that perspective of more so what the income that you do have, the income that you are receiving, where is that money going? Like, where is that money being allocated to?
Yeah.
Because even if you do, so you have someone who's making a salary, I don't know, 100 plus thousand a year, where then you also have someone who's making maybe, I don't know, 50,000 or less. I think it's really just focusing that perspective on like, okay, if you are making this amount of money, you know, do you have a lot of expenses? And if so, what are they? How much are they? And really trying to shift the conversation to there.
So what I'm hearing is establishing a budget. Yeah. Right. So you know where your money is, where it's going. Okay. All right. So that leads me to my next question here. And so you mentioned, you know, when you started mentoring, you were looking at underserved communities. And so as an African American man, finances just were not talked about growing up. It was kind of more like taboo for the most part. So these conversations were not happening, which is probably why I struggled so much in my class, is because I just had no context of the language. And so if you're working with someone, or if you look at the idea of family dynamics, especially within the Black households, you know, how do you approach conversations about money and finances with your friends, with your family? You know, what advice do you have for others in those personal discussions?
Yeah. Advice, I would say making it interactive. So it's so approaching the conversation from like an interactive manner, and not as if you're reading just like a book with a whole bunch of pages. But making learning about money fun and interactive, but yet informative for the person who's learning it. I would also say that's something that sets Wealth Network 360 apart, is because it's a learner-centered curriculum. Within our curriculum, we have 3 different subject areas: personal finance, real estate finance, and entrepreneurial finance. And then within each of those subject areas, there's units. So like in the personal finance subject area, there's like budget and credit and tax fundamentals, retirement planning, estate planning. And then within each of those units are different unit materials, like the assessments, the assignments, the workshops. So that helps make it more interactive instead of just reading a whole bunch of words on a page. So I would say, making it interactive for the person that you're having it, making it more conversational, and using like relatable examples of, like, you know, when you're doing a workshop with someone or talking to someone about acquiring real estate, acquiring a property, you know, like, okay, having a conversation like, you know, is this something that you desire in the future? Do you aspire to buy your own home, buy your own vehicle? All right, so like, what does that look like? Let's walk through how an interest rate, if you were to receive an auto loan, how the interest rate could influence the amount of your monthly payment. Like, what does that look like? So like having those conversations that are kind of more relatable to the person.
Yeah. That's funny, because I was thinking about that not long ago. I played Monopoly a lot growing up. But
I like that game too.
But it's like there's context there, but I didn't really know until I was an adult. Like, wait a minute, Why didn't I really take that serious in the sense of it's a game for the most part, but it does have some strong financial decision making in the game. And it's just like, we're not thinking about that at the time, but it was fun. But it's like goes back to what you said, make it easy to learn. And maybe that's the connection that we have. So that's great that you do that with wealth networking, and hopefully, families and those interested in understanding and learning will take that. Like, okay, what does that mean? Right. If this Miss Henderson is going to be working with individuals to help kind of dumb it down for some of us folks who don't really know a ton of it and get started, what does that look like? So that's great that you're doing that through your network. And so shifting a little bit, actually, we're not going to shift too much. We're going to stay on the idea of Wealth Network 360 because you just talked about kind of some of your core values and the mission of it. So, what impact do you hope to make through Wealth Network 360? And part B to that is, how do you measure success in your mission? So there's two questions. What impact do you hope to have through Wealth Network? And then how do you plan to measure your success through Wealth Network?
Okay. Yeah, I would say the impact that I hope to make through Wealth Network 360 is really creating a business where young adults can have access to financial tools, resources, and programs. The primary goal of Wealth Network 360 is to have financial literacy programs and courses available for young adults so they can have, that fundamental understanding of financial concepts that are involved in those three subject areas: personal finance, real estate finance, and entrepreneurial.
Okay.
The second part of that question with the impact measures, we measure the impact at Wealth Network 360 through 4 areas. One of them being the retention rates. So we measure like a percentage of organizations who complete like an entire course, an entire financial literacy course, whether it's the finance trifecta, the standard package, in return for additional services. So if we do it within 1 year, I know we just did that with an organization down here in Atlanta, Sharp Sessions, with Dr. Grant. And that was really last year. She did a summer enrichment camp, and then we came back this year and we were able to do a financial literacy workshop with her at this camp. And that was really fun. So I would say like the retention rates are one of the ways that we measure impact. The second one would be knowledge improvement. And, the course materials, they help assess changes in the participants' financial literacy before and after a course. So prior to students starting a course, they take a diagnostic. It's like a pretest almost of that subject area. And to kind of get an understanding, it helps the instructor get an understanding and gauge, okay, what do these students know that we're about, prior to us doing the course. And then at the end of the financial literacy course, we give a course evaluation, which again, kind of gives those, we help get feedback from the students for how the course went, but then also throughout the course, there's also assessments given where that will help measure, are they grasping the concepts that are being presented? Are there any ways that we could make this more interactive and easier for the student to understand? I would say another way we measure impact is program reach. So we monitor the number of individuals or groups served by the program and the demographics of those students. So I know so far we've had workshops in like Ohio, Illinois, and down here in Georgia. Again, serving students from different socioeconomic statuses, male, female, different ethnicities. It's just a mixture. It's very diverse, a very diverse group with different organizations, whether if they're nonprofits, educational institutions, or like learning centers. So yeah, trying to get that program reach out there to get students.
Awesome. All right, so we're winding down, and the last, this is technically the last question. Not the last question, but the last question for the interview per se. And so I saw on LinkedIn. You're pretty active. You established a scholarship.
Yes.
All right. So being who I am, of course I work in advancement and alumni relations, and finances are a huge part of what we do for advancing for our students' program scholarships and everything that our students need to have a successful college experience and student success and retention. What inspired you to establish a scholarship, um, and how do you hope it will influence the recipients in your
Yes. I would say motivation. Personally, my motivation came from looking at the opportunity to participate in Division One athletics throughout my time in college, and how I looked at that opportunity specifically as a blessing.
yeah
Be- because I had the opportunity to attend college on a full athletic scholarship, I observed like firsthand the essential role that scholarships play in helping shape someone's future, and allowing
yeah
them access to certain resources that they may not have access to any other way. And when I developed the scholarship program at Wealth Network 360, Building Bridges to Knowledge, I focused on how I can be a blessing to someone the same way God has been a blessing to me
yeah
throughout my life. And so the scholarship is designed to help, again, mitigate the financial burden of individuals who desire to pursue a higher education. And the scholarship is also available for students who are going to a university or a vocational school, so like or a trade school, because I do know, college isn't for everyone, and you really
right
do have to find your niche.
for sure
But we do have all of the eligibility criteria for the scholarship on the website. But yeah, it's available for students who are going the university route or trade school route. And I would say one of the goals of the scholarship is to just really recognize and reward academic excellence,
hmm
while opening up those doors to students to a range of opportunities and experiences. And I'll just add, lastly, a couple of the benefits from the scholarship program is, it's a $1,000 scholarship, so the financial reward. And then the selected recipient will also have the opportunity to enroll into our financial literacy course within
nice
that next enrollment period. And then also increased opportunities. So whether if it's they receive the scholarship out of high school, they would get it that first semester. But even, as that student's going through college, say their junior or senior year, if they're looking for an internship, they do have the opportunity to come intern at Wealth Network 360. Academic recognition, so honoring a student's academic achievements. And then lastly, just access to resources. So whether that's
yeah
mentoring or networking opportunities, we're here for the student.
That's awesome. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm extremely impressed with you, Ms. Henderson, and the idea of just starting a scholarship so early on into your young professional journey is pretty awesome. I'm a first gen college kid myself, and so to you do understand the idea of the resources and the scholarships and what those opportunities mean. And I think at YSU we talked about the team behind the teams. And there's always a team behind you, no matter where it is. And our supporters are always, we're grateful for all that they do in our journey. And so the last question is, I want to give you a little time to talk of how the listeners can get connected with you, get connected with Wealth Network 360, and learn a little bit about more what you're doing.
Yeah. So, if you're interested, if we have any listeners out there that are interested, we do have several enrollment periods throughout the year, which are available. You can check out more details at our website at wealthnetwork360.com. And whether that's our workshop Wednesdays or we have different financial literacy courses that range from a different number of weeks, from like 3 weeks all the way up to 20, whatever fits within that person's schedule. We have different workshops and different courses that are offered at different times throughout the year to allow really for the flexibility of the learner. We have more details. I would just encourage to enroll. And you can do that by going to visit our website at www.wealthnetwork360.com.
Awesome. Ms. Henderson, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and chat again. And again, excited to watch your journey go, and extremely proud of what you're doing in your community, and especially proud of what you're doing there in the Georgia area as well. So best of luck to you, and we look forward to watching you grow.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I am so glad you could join us for another episode of Under the Wing. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. I hope you found some value or joy in this episode. If you did, share the love by passing this episode along to a friend. And hey, if you know someone who would make a great guest, send their name my way. Until next time, friends, keep flying high and spreading love wherever you go. See you soon.